Senate Democrats joined with Republicans to kill Bernie's push for $2,000 checks. Now, unfortunately, this really isn't all that surprising. Bernie's attempt here was always going to be a long shot attempt, but at the very least, he was fighting, trying to get a vote on these $2,000 checks that had already passed the democratically controlled House. Now, let me break this down for you. So, as I discussed in my previous video on this, on the 28th, Bernie came out here saying this week on the Senate floor, Mitch McConnell wants to vote to override Trump's veto of the $740 billion defense funding bill and then head home for the new year. I'm going to object until we get a vote on legislation to provide a $2,000 direct payment to the working class. So that's exactly what Bernie Sanders did. Working as well across the aisle, as I'm going to get to, some Republicans did not vote with the GOP and Democrats here. But Bernie here was fighting to get a vote on this. And ultimately, here's what happened. So from the Daily Poster, Sanders' move forced McConnell to ask the Senate to pass a formal motion to proceed on the defense bill, which would let Republicans move forward on the Pentagon priority without a vote on the $2,000 checks. The motion created the moment in which Democrats could have stood their ground and cornered the GOP leader. Instead, as Republicans saber-rattled about the need to pass the defense bill, 41 Democrats obediently voted with McConnell, allowing him to move the defense bill forward without a vote on the checks. That included yes votes from Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, the lead sponsor on a bill to give Americans monthly $2,000 checks during the pandemic. One day before her vote to help McConnell, Harris had called on the Republican leader to hold a vote on her legislation. So, when push comes to shove, these people show you who they really are. Chuck Schumer, for a while now, has been rhetorically pretending to lean left, has been calling on Joe Biden publicly to cancel $50,000 in student debt, has been pushing for this $2,000 checks. Ultimately, when it came down to it, though, he didn't vote in the way that it would have helped Bernie Sanders and his initiative here. And Kamala Harris, of course, as we've seen again and again, whether it's Medicare for all or this, when it comes down to it, it's all just showmanship. It's all just pretending to actually push for things that in reality, when it comes down to it, they won't actually get in the fight to push for the very things they pretend to support. Now, before I get to more on this, Rashida Tlaib, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, fantastic response here, coming out and saying this is how you lose the faith of the American people. How is this going to show Georgians and the nation that Democrats will stand by them in the future when they won't now in the midst of the largest public health and financial crisis of our lifetime? So this is the kind of fight I like to see, because again, this already passed the House. So Rashida Tlaib and others in the squad, they did their job supporting these $2,000 checks. It's the Senate that's controlled by Mitch McConnell and the GOP where the issue comes in, because of course you don't have a majority of Democrats there. You have very few progressive senators, Bernie Sanders being one of maybe two. I'm going to get to, though, there's a few others that actually supported Bernie's push here. But this is exactly right. Rashida Tlaib calling out her own party for their failure in leadership in this moment. More here. So only 6 members of the Senate Democratic Caucus mustered the courage to vote against McConnell's maneuver. Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Chris Van Hollen, Jeff Merkley, Ed Markey, and Ron Wyden. Democratic senators, in fact, provided the majority of the votes for the measure that lets the defense bill proceed without a vote on the $2,000 checks. Had most Senate Democrats voted against the motion, they might have had a chance to deny McConnell and stall the process. After all, 5 Republicans also voted against the measure, including Missouri's Josh Hawley, who has pushed for the survival checks with Sanders. So, let's be clear here. These are the only people, and of course, look, I got some criticism, especially of Elizabeth Warren, but these are the only people that actually, when it came down to it, fought to keep this going. And you even had some members of the Republican Party come out and join Bernie Sanders and those 5 others on this. Now, ultimately, look, it's important to be clear when we're discussing people like Josh Hawley. He just came out to say that he's going to vote against the decision to the Electoral College decision on Joe Biden. So understand that people like Josh Hawley, they're not working in your best interest. But when it comes to issues like this, they understand the popularity of direct payments, because people like Josh Hawley, he's going to try and run in 4 years. So this is what this is about. He is having these populist moments that he can go back to later and say, hey, look, I stood with Donald Trump when it came to the election process and when it came to these survival checks. So he knows the right notes to hit when it comes to trying to basically absorb Trump's support base. So that's just a note for the future, because people like Josh Hawley, they're going to try and use these populist moments to make it seem like they're above the process in Washington, when in reality they are one of the swamp creatures. But that said, of course, you got to give credit to him in this moment, because he has been fighting with Bernie Sanders for these direct payments. Now, of course, what also helped Mitch McConnell here was the fact that people like Larry Summers came out to be against the direct payments. So Bloomberg TV here saying $2,000 checks would be a pretty serious mistake. Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers says larger stimulus checks to Americans could risk overheating the economy. So, of course, Larry Summers, former hedge fund executive and Obama's national economic director. So arguments like that, and also the Washington Post here, why increasing the stimulus checks from 600 to 2,000 is a bad idea. Mitch McConnell used this article and used Larry Summers in his words on the floor, discussing why they shouldn't vote on the $2,000. So these neoliberals helped prop up McConnell's argument, because again, these people are not on your side. When it comes down to it, they rather work with fascists than work with the left to actually give the American people the help they need during a pandemic.